Hi there. So my name's Christopher Challis. I'm a senior product manager at Tyk, and I'm delighted to tell you about a feature which we've just added to Tyk in Tyk 5.14 called OAuth2 Token Exchange. Admittedly, it's not the most exciting name. However, it answers a very, very profound question with far-reaching consequences. So, if you have an agent, assume you have an agent, it's acting on your behalf, and it autonomously decides it wants to call your CRM system to complete a task. Whose identity does that agent use, and how does it use it? So prior to Tyk 5.14, we did have two broad security mechanisms to help solve this. Neither of them are ideal. Token pass-through was a solution which you'll see it's quite popular on the market at the moment. And what essentially happens is a user logs into a system, an agent assumes the identity of that user using an SSO token. The agent then autonomously, acting on behalf of that user, decides it needs to complete a task by calling an MCP service. So the token pass-through really involves the agent will authenticate with a gateway using the SSO token, and then the gateway forwards that same SSO token to the backend service. So it does work. Unfortunately, it's non-compliant with the MCP spec. And the reason for that is that token is way broader in scope than any MCP server needs. It is essentially describes everything which the logged on user has access to. So if that token is compromised anywhere in the chain or any of the backend services, the damage can affect everything that user has access to. So from June 2025, the MCP authorization spec explicitly forbid this model. The second option was a classic API pattern, and that's where you create a shared service account and the MCP server runs on that shared service account. Again, it works. The problem with it, though, is the backend, the upstream service, which the MCP server calls, has absolutely no idea who triggered the call. Everything's from a shared service account, so the identity is not propagated through to the backend service. So this will fail all of your compliance checks. There's no real audit trail. So we designed a solution called Token Exchange, which we've incorporated into the platform. And the flow is this. So a user logs into the system. They log into the system once. Then an agent acting on behalf of the user assumes this identity. The agent, again, autonomously decides it wants to make use of an MCP service to complete a task. So it forwards the SSO token to Tyk to authenticate and tries to make the call to the backend service. Tyk authenticates, Tyk validates the SSO token, and the user has access to the backend service which they wanted to call. If the validation checks pass, then the gateway will exchange this overprivileged SSO token with your IDP for a token that's scoped to exactly that operation and nothing more, and then passes that token, very short-lived token, to the backend service. The MCP server received a very short-lived token which says this agent wants to call this particular MCP tool, for example, and here's the token which authorizes it. The token only identifies the user, says the user has access to that tool and nothing else, and it only lasts for 1 hour. The MCP then server runs the operation. All is good, and the beauty of this is that the logged on user is visible at every single part of the audit trail, even the backend service itself. The token which the backend servers receive is scoped to exactly what was requested and nothing more. It really is a least privileged trust model, and the user only had to log in once. So this isn't new. We in Tyk we wrote a proof of concept on this maybe 3-4 years ago, but the demand wasn't there. But the new threat servers of Agentic AI and MCP has really raised the bar and brought this to the fore. The MCP spec got stronger with authorization through numerous iterations until it explicitly forbid prior models which user was using. And we've also had a number of enterprise customers ask for a more robust solution to what we had available right now. Some customers were even saying, some prospects were even saying, this is a blocker for using our MCP Gateway. So it did make this this particular enhancement pretty urgent. So we had a number of customers who raised objections to the current security models, and they needed more. So we discussed in depth with these customers exactly what they wanted, where the issues, and we're pretty proud of the solution which we've developed. So much like the MCP Gateway, which we developed and released in Tyk 5.14, the differentiators of the MCP Gateway were the ability to the granular controls which were available. So, for example, a security team or the platform administrator could say that this individual tool is not available to this particular user, like tool level ACLs and also tool level rate limiting, very, very granular controls. And we've passed this through to a token exchange. So rather than what you'll see is very common on the market, and this is a bit of a red flag, that you can on the rest you'll see other platforms will allow you to provide scopes to the server level. So we'll allow you to provide scopes to the tool level. So for example, if a server contains 3 read operations and 1 write operation, if you can only set scopes to the server level, then the scopes required are read and write. On Tyk, you can set the scopes to the tool level, because there's no read operation needs a write scope and there's no write operation needs a read scope. Server level just is not granular enough. We perform the exchange. We'll never pass a broad token to a backend service. Again, I said this is quite popular in the market right now, contravenes the MCP spec, and it also puts the onus on the MCP servers to perform the exchange. On Tyk, no code changes are required whatsoever. The gateway is the perimeter. It's built to handle authentication and authorization, and token exchange fits really neatly in that. MCP servers are application code. They should never be holding the keys to the kingdom. And although MCP was the driver for this, it's a security concept that's equally applicable to REST APIs. As I said, we wrote a proof of concept on REST APIs 3 or 4 years ago. So we built this as a shared concern, and it turns out this is surprisingly rare on the market. And finally, one gateway, any IDP. So if you work with any IDP that supports token exchange, we can work with that IDP. In Tyk 5.15, we'll even extend support even further to include support for Microsoft Entra on behalf of, which is an alternative flow. So keep your eyes open for that one. And now what I'd like to do is to pass you over to Laurentiu, who would like to give you a demo on the end-to-end token exchange.
Okay, so as Chris said, agentic identity is a real problem in today's agentic flows. And that's because an agent can take advantage of user capabilities and do more actions than it was intended to do. It's the classical confused deputy problem. Also where users may take advantage of agents' capabilities to do some actions that users initially don't have access to. So for that, the solution for that problem is well established within the OAuth flows, and it's called token exchange. And today I'm going to demonstrate how Tyk solves this problem by helping setups to do this token exchange with the IDPs and ensure that the access is narrowed down. For that, I've built a real-like chat application that will clearly demonstrate the role Tyk plays into this flow and how it can help customers to achieve the wanted output. This chat application simulates like a customer support application, and it has two users. One is Alice that has lower rights, lower privileges. So for instance, it has just access to the customer read scope. So therefore it can just look up the orders. And another user, custom manager, let's say, that can look up the orders, update customers, or refund issues. And what is the journey we'll demonstrate exactly is that these users will log into this chat application, will perform an action, which this chat application implements a real MCP client, and through the request, it will trigger an MCP tool call, but the MCP server is protected by Tyk. Tyk will get the incoming token the users have, and it will validate the access to the MCP server if they have the right scopes to hit those tools. If not, we reject, or it will exchange the token with the IDP to a more narrowed audience. And in the end, the exchange token will then hit the backend API, which sits behind the MCP server, which is also protected by Tyk. So now let's see how it goes. If we go to the application, we can log in as Alice in the first instance. I'm logged in as Alice. I can see on my left-hand side my chat interface, and on the right-hand side a small debugger. And let's say as Alice, I want to look up a specific customer. And as you can see, the request is successful. And on the debugging side, what I can see is the SSO token I've obtained when I logged in with Keycloak. And here I can see the audience of this token. Basically, the backend API is hidden from this chat application, and what scopes this token has. And as you can see here, the SSO token has been successfully exchanged with a more narrowed one that now points to the backend API internal audience, and the scopes of this token have been updated. Right, so the request was successful, but if I try to update the customer now, it will tell me that the token Alice has insufficient scopes, and that required scopes are customers' right. I've chosen that the gateway, the MCP proxy that protects the MCP server, checks for the entitlement field, and as Alice doesn't have the right entitlement, the gateway will respond with this, and will suggest agents to go to this URL, which is a protected resource metadata, to understand what authorization server to call in order to obtain a new token with the right scopes. But of course, this is also dependent on the IDP setup. If the clients or users belong to the right user groups. Cool. I'm gonna sign in now as Bob. And here you'll see that Bob is allowed to perform all the required actions. Moreover, the exchange token has a short lifespan, but even so, we are caching it based on audience scopes, the intended action. So we're not gonna communicate with the IDP every single time. So let's see how this is configured in practice on the Tyk side. You'll see that for this demo, I've prepared an MCP proxy definition, which displays the rules on how to protect the MCP server. It has two authentication mechanisms configured. One is the JWT token, which validates the incoming SSO token against the JW keys from the Keycloak. And the second one is OAuth2, which configures OAuth2 specific flows. One is scope check, so it looks into the entitlements claim on the token and validates if the incoming token has the right entitlements to hit the wanted tool. If not, it will respond with the protected resource metadata as demoed before. And here you can document all the necessary information from the return protected resource metadata, as well as how the gateway should perform the token exchange, what endpoint to request, what's the audience to request for in the new token, and what default scopes. As well, you can go and see for each tool the MCP proxy is protecting. You can define what scopes are required to hit a specific tool. And that's how the gateway knows to reject the application or to ask for enhanced scopes when performing the narrowed scopes when performing the token exchange. So this is the MCP proxy that protects the MCP server, but then we've configured also the OAuth API definition that protects the end backend, and this defines all the endpoints that are mapped to the tools the chat uses. Also, at this level, you can define the required scopes to hit a specific endpoint, and you can as well define a scope check capability. So this looks now into the exchange token on the scope claim and see if the exchange token has the rights to hit a specific endpoint. And thank you, and that's about it.
So, as I alluded to earlier, in Tyk 5.14, we're extending token exchange support to include support for Microsoft Enterers on behalf of Flow. But we have a number of other really exciting enhancements coming up, which I'd like to tell you about. So, we're very close to shipping this particular feature. What this will allow you to do will publish your MCP proxies, which are defined within Tyk. Be able to publish those under the Enterprise Developer Portal for developer consumption. So within the same product catalogs, you'll be able to have APIs and the MCP proxies living side by side for your developer or partner consumption. Imminent. In addition to that, we also have quite an exciting feature called API, which we're calling API to MCP. So this is for those who have hundreds of internal APIs, thousands, even tens of thousands in some cases. If your platform teams wanted the agents to be able to call those APIs to make use of that functionality, traditionally you'd have to write MCP wrappers over all of those other APIs. That simply doesn't scale. So what Tyk does is allow you to create an MCP proxy. The only difference from the regular MCP proxy is the backend servers is an API hosted on Tyk. There's no custom code required. The APIs are already defined. You don't have to make any changes to your API whatsoever. The proxy layer handles all of the translation and the transformation. You can even enrich within the proxy if the API does have some operations which are named for humans and not AI, or if the descriptions are missing, you can replenish the data within this proxy layer. And also, you can have multiple proxies pointing to the same API. So if you have an API which contains thousands of endpoints, you'll be able to segment that with a number of different MCP servers per function. So we're quite excited about that. Again, this is imminent, maybe 5.15. MCP aggregator proxy. This is what happens when you go from 3 or 4 MCP servers and you've got production level infrastructure with 50 MCP servers, and you also have 50, 60, 70 agents working autonomously. You have a scaling problem. So you'll have you'll have MCP servers for customer systems, for your inventory, payment processing, analytics, and without aggregation, every single agent needs to be configured with all of the MCP servers which it requires access to. Your platform team have to manage policies across dozens of individual servers. The aggregated proxy allows you to combine multiple MCP servers into a single tool catalog. So agents will discover anything automatically. They'll need to be configured to view the aggregated proxy. You'll be able to have fine-grained RBAC in place to say this agent can only see these particular tools within this aggregate proxy. The agents don't need to know about individual like back-end services. They just got a list. Here's the 50 tools they can access. And the beauty of this pattern is the agents can discover those tools dynamically. New tools added to the back-end servers appear automatically within their tool catalog. Deprecated tools disappear all at runtime. No configurations required anywhere on the client side. This tool's under active development. So once we've wrapped up with MCP proxy patterns, our focus will then be on A2A. So we haven't seen the same exponential adoption that we've seen with MCP yet. We do expect this to change and change quickly given the conversations with customers over the past few months. Hence, we push for a full Agentic Gateway. So we're looking to apply the same rigor to govern MCPs and APIs into A2A. So you have security, governance, visibility of every interaction, fine-grained RBAC, so agents cards are dynamically filtered to whoever the consumer is. Very, very excited about this one. We also want to provide security for every single agentic interaction, which goes hand in hand with the final enhancement I want to discuss with you, which is multi-hop token exchange. So if you have agent A needs to call agent B, which needs to call agent C before it calls an upstream MCP server. If those agents are protected by Tyk will be able to exchange every token which it receives for the token which is required for the next hop in the chain. We'll have all sorts of protections in place, such as allowed targets and depth cap. But we're very, very excited with this in combination with the A2A Gateway that we really will have a very, very exciting agentic governance proposition. Thank you.